because it's the silly, stupid, fascinating, weird, wonderful. They're my people, and more often than not, they're the geeky people as well.
I mentioned Betamax. For anybody older, that's the old version of a video cassette. Video cassette is an old version of a DVD. A DVD is not set on the cloud. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else. Welcome to another episode of Faith and Geekery. This evening, unfortunately, Becca can't be with us, and so much love to Becca tonight. But we have got our guest with us, Rory, who will be joining me in a moment. Good evening and welcome to Lydia, who has commented in already. Oh, I assume that's meant to be a hello and not just a derogatory comment there, Lydia. I hope you are doing well, and welcome to others. As we begin, we ask the same old question of what geeky things have you been up to since we have last gathered? I wonder if it's been something traditionally geeky, abnormally geeky. As earlier on today, I thought I would have to be doing abnormally geeky with repairing a boiler, but it turns out that as our Chubb fire extinguisher chappie had come yesterday, I was rearranging things in the kitchen and accidentally touched that little tiny fuse switch underneath the boiler, which had turned it off. So I did wonder why we suddenly had no hot water or boiler or facilities. So fortunately, the geekiness around boilers was averted by finding that little tiny switch. So yes, that was a relief. Yes, I didn't quite edit in time. My apologies. No worries at all, Lydia. It is a pleasure to have you with us. So, as we gather, I wonder how we are doing, how our week has been, and and how our mood is faring. I've got to say, a little bit tired tonight, a little bit kind of worldly battered, but it's a good one still. I'm still here, still all is well. As we gather, and as feel free to share your geeky things as things come up. I thought it would be good to share our geeky news, and as always, we have our nice little sting for that. Tonight on Geeky News, there's only a few things tonight. First of all, there is interest regarding Clash of Clans. For it is kind of, I don't know whether it's struggling a little bit otherwise, but it's got a Manchester City player. I've even forgotten the chappie's name, but Supercell has offered a little picture there. And it's interesting trying to maybe revitalise the Clash of Clans franchise. Very popular on the mobile phone and with teenagers majoritively, but I think I racked up about a level 136 when I was into it, but time moved on. Next, sad news of Line of Duty star Brian McCarthy dies at 59, which is very sad. And then in a little bit of a strange twist, I don't know if you've seen these kind of Boston Dynamics robot dogs, which these are kind of either being programmed for war, for innovation, for self-writing, and they're really kind of quite creepy and crazy little kind of animals, creatures, robots even. But what they've done is they've put a dog costume, which almost looks like the dog from Fraggle Rock, if you don't mind that reference. And it looks really eerie. So if you can find that online, I don't have the rights to play it. But it's really fascinating to see this kind of robot dog with the puppetry costume over top. It is really quite interesting. So yeah, it's just a brief geeky news tonight, but one of interest nonetheless. So there we have geeky news. So tonight I'm not on my own. I've been joined by Rory. If I can bring him on the stage for some reason, there we go. And good evening, Rory. How are you doing tonight?
I'm well, Mark. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. I'm
Good.
all right. Have you been up to anything geeky in the last week or so?
We had a big scarecrow festival in Haxby over the weekend. So I've built most of an ender dragon, and the thing
cool.
I need to work out is how to attach the wings. It's going to fly. We had 2 years ago. We did a Elliot and ET on a bicycle, and I managed to suspend them over our front lawn
Wow.
using almost invisible means. So the ender dragon's going to fly. The problem is it's going to be quite windy. So got some calculations to do with regards to the dragon and the tethering. But I enjoy that kind of stuff. So that's my
that's
next
fantastic.
couple of days and evenings at least.
Yeah. That ticks all the boxes for geekiness, Minecraft as well as crafty, as well as a scientific needing to. I mean, you wouldn't want to be in the news for the wrong reasons if it took off literally around the.
But there are prizes to be won, and there are prizes to be won, and my wife is fiercely competitive about the Scarecrow Festival. So we keep upping our game to see how we do.
Oh, fantastic! Oh, that sounds absolutely fantastic. That's really good indeed. And thank you for joining us tonight. And again, as I said earlier, unfortunately, we don't have Becca with us. She sent her apologies and is really sad to miss out on your sharing of astronomy a little bit later. But as with our usual kind of timetable of things, we tend to have our quiz. And so, folks, if you have a pen and paper or device ready to kind of write some answers down, we shall kind of mosey on into that. And folks, do just say if you are taking part, if how you fare. Please don't cheat there. We've had a few people trying to give away answers on the comments in recent months. James, you know who you are. But if you're sitting comfortably, we shall begin. So, just a reminder again, the reason why we do the quiz is a sense of a bit of novelty, a bit of humour, and a bit of stretching of the cerebral matter. But it's also there just to remind us that kind of geeks come in all swathes and forms. And so this is just a little reminder to say that actually you can be conventionally geeky, you can be unconventionally geeky, you can be into the normal stuff, you can be interested in the really strange stuff, and these quizzes here are just to remind us that we can be as broadly geeky as we want to be, and if you just choose to be geeky for tonight, we'll accept you as you are. So question number 1, if you are ready, it says in oil painting, which one of these isn't a proper colour? And this is per windsornewton.com, which is other brands of oil paint are available. So which one of these isn't a proper colour? And we've got 4 to choose from. A, cobalt blue. B, cobalt green. C, French marine. Or D, titanium white. I'll repeat the question again. In oil painting, which one of these isn't a proper colour? As per Winsor Newton, that you can buy from. A, cobalt blue. B, cobalt green. C, French marine. Or D, titanium white. So I've left you to ponder that for a couple of moments. We're going to come on to question number 2. What is the UK's song entry for Eurovision 2024? Or what is the name of the song for Eurovision 2024 from the UK? Question number 3 is, well, there's a number of answers for this one. I'll accept any one of them. But question number 3 is, name a hairless breed of cat. That's name a hairless breed of cat, not just name a hairless cat. Name a hairless breed of a cat. And then one TV related. Question number 4. What series of QI is currently being broadcast here in the UK? And I'm looking for a letter of the alphabet. So what series of QI is currently being broadcast here on the BBC in the UK? Obviously, if we were watching like back on Dave, then you would have a whole number of letters to watch back over to choose from, but just the current ones that are moment broadcasting. And finally, question number 5, and I realise that Rory, you might have an interest in this. I'm not sure. What is the current biggest Lego set on sale at the moment? And that's in regards to size as well as pieces. And I can tell you the pieces are 10,001 pieces and a height of 149 centimetres. So that is what is the current biggest Lego set on sale in the UK at the moment, with 10,001 pieces at a height of 149 centimetres. Just give you a moment to scribble, to finalise, and to return to any that you might. Did you hear all those? Did you get all the answers for those, Rory? How well do you feel?
I didn't know the second one, but I'm fairly confident about the others. So
fantastic.
There we go.
Fantastic. Folks, do just chip in with your answers as we have them. So, question number 1, the answer is French ultramarine is the actual real answer. So French marine is the false one. All the others are an actual proper colour that you can buy. Did you get that?
No, I've gone for cobalt green because I know there's cobalt blue.
Yeah.
And I thought, why would they do both?
I know, and it's strange, isn't it? I thought that was a little bit of a tricksy one.
I'm trying to think what color it goes when it oxidizes, but that's a bit too geeky. Anyway,
And then question number 2 is, what is the UK song title for a song entry for Eurovision 2024? You said you didn't know that, did you?
I can see the face of the guy who's singing it. I have no idea what his name is or what the song is.
It is Dizzy. It is Dizzy, which I think there's a few kind of singles out there in UK history of pop charts. So it's not completely unknown, but yes, I don't think I could actually recognise it even if it was played on the radio, if I'm honest. Question number 3, name a hairless breed of cat. You could have any type of these following 6, and this is according to Purina. There are Sphinx, Bambino, Donskoy, Peterbald, Ukrainian Levkoi, and Elf. Genuinely, as I reflected this, I thought maybe I would have been able to get Sphinx, and that was about it. Did you get any of those?
Manx. No, I wrote Manx, but they're the ones without a tail. I just realised.
Yes,
I think I'm not a cat person, so I don't know.
no, I think you're right. And
I'm not a cat person.
For full admission, I think I actually went down that route as well initially when I was thinking about it. What series of QI is currently being broadcast here in the UK? It is the letter U. The letter U.
It is U, yeah.
And then finally, what is the current biggest Lego set on sale at the moment? Could you take a guess, Rory?
It's the world map, I think. I think it's that one, but it's a bit of controversy because it's you get lots of tiny dots to do a range of world maps if it is that one. So you don't have all of them on at the same time. But I think it's that one if I'm not mistaken, although I could be wrong.
To be honest, I'll let you have that because technically it is no longer on sale. But in the chart, on the chart of them, that would have been the highest, but it's currently not on sale at the moment, as per the Lego.com, which I checked this afternoon.
Can I guess again?
Yeah, go on.
Is it the Rivendell
set? No, it's the Eiffel Tower. It's the Eiffel Tower.
Oh, okay.
Which I was trying to give a hint about the height of it being 149 centimeters, but then so the next place is the Titanic with 9,000 pieces, and it's 135 centimeters long, and all the others are the next kind of size up, including the Rivendell ones, are about 3,000 pieces less, so about 6,000 pieces. So, but yeah, the world map, it was saying officially it would be that one, but it's no longer on sale at the moment. So I wonder, folks, how well did you do? Put your scores in the comments, and do just just feel free to comment and be part of the chat. That would be lovely. Thank you. So we have we've done our little geeky news, we've done our quiz, and so it is a great pleasure to invite Rory to come and chat about his interest. And I think we've got one in particular. Oh, in fact, just before we go there, we've got Stephen saying, "Hi everyone, a nice round number. Normal service has resumed." So is that a 0 then, Stephen? I thought I was maybe going a little bit easier than what Becca usually offers, dare I say, in her absence. But apologies if that was a bit too difficult for folks. But good evening, Stephen. It is good to see you. And so Rory, we are in your hands.
Thank you,
would you like me to bring up the little PowerPoint now, or do you want to introduce?
Yeah, if you just bring up this. Well, so I've put together just a couple of slides. No point talking about the sky without sort of looking at the sky, but also just beginning and ending with some of my toys, some of which are about stargazing and some of which are sort of crossover things, and we can have a look at those later. So yeah. So I've got 2 telescopes. Currently, I've had a range of. I've never had more than 2, but these are the 2 I have now. And the one on the left is quite small. Quite compact, quite nice to carry around. It also, you'll see it's computerized, so it's brilliant if I'm out with my telescopes, because I can point it at something. I can tell it where it is. It can work out where it is in the sky, and then I can ask it to go anywhere, and it'll find something and then just track it. So if I'm out with a group of people, it's great to have that one on the side, because you can just point it at the moon, and anyone who wants to can go and look at the moon is always in the eyepiece.
When you say point it, is it using a remote control? Is it using an app, or how do you?
So you'll see this. You can use an app with it, but I've got. You see, there's a little controller, sort of attached to it at the bottom there. So so it uses that, and you've got to input your coordinates. You can use a Wi-Fi dongle, and then you can use an app on the phone. And I've tried that, but it's not a telescope I use a lot, but it's quite fun to have when I've got a group out, because there's always something to look at, and you don't have to keep adjusting the telescope. People might be surprised by that, because you think, well, the stars aren't moving, but if you have anything fairly high magnitude in a telescope, it actually moves across the screen, across the viewfinder quite quickly, and disappears, because the Earth is turning quite fast. So it's just a bit of fun to have. And the one on the right is aperture's 12 inches, so it's a 300 mil aperture. It's basically a light bucket, and it's sort of 5 feet long, the tube, just over 5 feet long. So it's a big beast. It's not heavy, it's hollow. There's a mirror at the bottom, a concave mirror, and the light comes in the top, shines back onto another mirror, and then reflects out the side. Those aren't my actual telescopes. I just found pictures of them, because they're both just sort of packed in inconvenient places at the moment. But that's what I've got. And the big one is brilliant, because it just gathers a huge amount of light, which is really what you need if you're looking at faint fuzzy things, or even the planets when they're in a good place. The more light that comes into the telescope, the better the image. And it's a bit like pizzas. You buy a 6-inch pizza, or you buy an 11-inch pizza, and you buy a 14-inch pizza, and the price difference isn't that much. But a 14-inch pizza is more than 1.5 times as much, just because of the way that circumference works. So that's my slightly older eyes. It's just a great telescope to look at. Especially galaxies and things outside of the Milky Way.
I was going to say, how far can they look? Because I assume that bigger means further. Does it? Yeah.
So one of the things, well, I guess the thing that's furthest away that we can see is one of the images that I'll show you. So so we can crack on to the next picture.
Yeah,
those are my toys. So that's not my photo, but it is a great photo. It's in Cornwall, I think, and you'll never see that with a naked eye. Cameras take long exposures, and you can build up an image like that. But it's a winter image, and if you know anything about the sky, bang in the middle, you've got Orion's belt, 3 stars going across, and then the sword coming down at an angle towards the back end of the castle. And Orion is the big constellation in the winter sky. And inside the sword, you can actually on a good night see it if it's fairly dark. There's like a big fuzzy patch, which even through binoculars you can see, and it's like a star nursery. There are stars literally being born in the Orion Nebula, which is this massive cloud of gas which is swirling and coalescing and forming stars. 4 very bright stars sitting right at the middle of it, which are you can see them quite easily, even through a really good pair of binoculars with good eyes. But that's Orion, which dominates the night sky.
So
in winter.
Do you think this photo here then would have been taken with a digital SLR sort of thing without
absolutely
a microscope and just like on
longish
exposure?
No telescope. And in fact, I don't take photographs. I just look at things as they are. But with a digital SLR, you can take amazing photos of the night sky. With the tricky thing is you've got to get a mount that moves in the same way that the night sky is moving. Otherwise it gets a bit blurry. So
just at the weekend, my father-in-law, who is a photographer, and his wife, who is a professional photographer, were just sharing their pictures of the Northern Lights. So I was being introduced to the kind of the movement and the need to kind of very very kind of brief kind of I think it was very surprising how little they needed of exposure, because otherwise the movement would have just kind of dominated everything. Although I guess technically with the Northern Lights that's okay, but further afield, yes, that's very fascinating.
It's quite surprising how quickly, when you zoom in at all in the night sky, it's moving. It looks very static, but actually it isn't. So one of the stars I wanted to point out. So if you look at Orion's belt and then you go down to the left towards the edge of the apex, you'll see there's a very bright star there. Now that star is called Sirius, and that is the second brightest star in the night sky from anywhere on Earth. You can't see it. We can't see the brightest star because it's visible in the southern hemisphere. We're just a bit far north. But Sirius is the second brightest. It's the nearest star to us. There's nothing nearer to us than Sirius. And Sirius is 8 light years away.
Gosh.
So that's 8 years of light traveling at nearly 200,000 miles a second, and that's our nearest star. Part of the point of the images, and part of the thing I love about astronomy, is just how ridiculously small we are in comparison to the universe. And I love Sirius as a point of reference. When I'm out with people showing them the stars, whether I've got a telescope or not, I always point at Sirius and say, where were you? Who were you? What was happening in your life? What decisions were you making? Just 8 years ago. What was your life 8 years ago? The light that's hitting your retina left Sirius 8 years ago when those things were happening. And now it's entering your eye, and now it's firing your synapses, and now your brain saying there it is. And it just gives a point of reference, for the passage of time. That I find a lot of people find quite an interesting thing to talk about. It's interesting how that kind of question unlocks storytelling in a way that, if you just said to people, what were you doing 8 years ago? They might not say very much. But when you bring in the idea of these photons of light traveling and all of your traveling, people somehow feel permission to actually tell complete strangers quite a lot more about themselves than they might have otherwise done. But it's just it's a fascinating. It's one of the scales of how big the universe is, just how big the Milky Way is. That's our nearest star. 8 years of traveling at 200,000 miles a second.
That's fantastic.
And then if you go up diagonally to the right, there's a very bright red star, which is Betelgeuse. Betelgeuse is really young. It's about 10 million years old. It's enormous. It's a red supergiant. It's quite hard for scientists to work out how far away it is and how big it is, because it's changing shape and size all the time. It's very unstable. But we reckon it's about 650 light years away, 600 to 800 light years away.
Gosh.
and it's really old. It's expected to go supernova in the next 100,000 years. It could do that tomorrow, and then we'd find out, in 700 years' time. But it's about to literally explode, collapse in on itself and explode. But just to give you an idea of the scale of it, if Betelgeuse was at the center of our solar system, its corona, the outer shell of it, would be around about where Jupiter is.
Oh wow!
Everything inside the orbit of Jupiter, which is about 800 million miles, would be completely within that star. And when it explodes, nothing will happen to us, but it will completely, for several months, it'll dominate the night. It'll wash out everything at night. There'll be almost nothing to see, and you'll be able to see it during the day. There'll be this bright star in the daytime sky, no matter how bright it is, for a couple of months, and then it'll fade. And so that's quite imminent in astronomical terms, but it's really young. As I say, it's 10 million years old. It's an absolute baby of a star, but it's been partying hard. And
is it? I was going to say it's a baby, but yet is that the?
Oh, it's
going to blow.
No, but Betelgeuse has just partied really hard, burnt all the hydrogen into helium, and at some point the helium will all be gone. It'll all become iron. It'll all collapse in on itself, and bang, they will all have a bit of a show for a couple of months, if there are any of us left when it does.
Did you say how long to wait?
Scientists are quite confident within the next 100,000 years, so it could be any time. But it's quite hard to get. Yeah. And then lastly, if you look the other way from Orion's belt up towards the right, there's a little cluster of stars almost on the frame, and that's the Pleiades. That's called the Seven Sisters. It's part of a cluster of about 1,000 stars, but you can't see many of them. But there are 6 to the naked eye, 7 on a really good night, and through a pair of binoculars, it's a beautiful thing to look at, because they're all kind of middle-aged white stars, so they're very bright, and they're passing through a cloud of dust and gas. So there's all this kind of blue luminosity around them. It's quite ethereal, and that's about 450 light years away from us. You can clearly see it as a kind of fuzzy patch in the sky on a decent evening. The best stargazing is in winter when it's freezing cold in the sky and the sky is clear. I don't do much of the summer because I'm a morning person, so I'm in bed long before it's properly dark. But just in the winter night sky, in that one little patch of the sky, there's a lot to see and a lot of interesting stories to tell.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah. So next one.
Should we move on?
Yeah. So that's the full moon, and this isn't a photograph. This is a composition. But our nearest galactic neighbor. This is the furthest thing you could probably see. Well, not really, but it's the nearest thing to us that you can see almost with the naked eye on a really good night, and it is the Andromeda Galaxy, which is our nearest neighbor. It's 2.5 million light years away. It's traveling towards us. We're gonna have a bit of a meeting of galaxies, but only in about 4 billion years' time, so we're safe. It's about 220,000 light years across, and that's to scale. So if you could see the whole of it in the night sky, that's what it would look like in the sky. 2.5 million light years away. It's as wide as 6 full moons next to each other. When you look at it, you can see it sometimes on a clear night, just as a very faint fuzzy blob. And with a decent telescope, you just begin to pick up some of the arms, but you'll only see about the middle third of it, maybe, and then a little bit of detail. But full scale and right across, it's 6 full moons across the sky. And that's our nearest neighbor, one of about 40 to 80 galaxies, depending on who you ask, in our local group, which sounds round the corner, but is a massive bit of space. But that is our kind of neighborhood, our galactic neighborhood.
Wow.
Ridiculous distances to imagine, but quite extraordinary to think that every night that's actually just like that. It's in the sky. We just can't see it like that, but it's there.
Oh, fantastic.
And the next one. So this is in the constellation called Perseus. It's a double cluster of stars. A lot of stars are in kind of what they call open clusters within the plane of the Milky Way, and then there are some really old blobs of stars, literally called globular clusters, that hang around the edges. And there are these two clusters in Perseus, which are really near to each other, and that's what you'll see on a good night if you look through my larger telescope. That's the view you'd have. It's just extraordinary to have that much kind of information, that many stars, looking in your eyeballs, and realize that light's actually the light from those stars entering your eyeballs. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. There are lots of things in the sky that are interesting, but they just are beautiful. The Pleiades is like that. The only thing I would say is that if you were looking through a telescope at night, you wouldn't actually see the colored stars. You wouldn't see the blues and the yellows very clearly at all, because when your eyes adjust to proper night conditions, they actually just ditch color and become, so your vision kind of becomes black and white. So you wouldn't see the colors nearly as clearly, but you can see that many stars, and literally, tens of thousands of stars really far away from each other, but kind of gathered into clusters that are just hanging there, wherever they are. Beautiful thing to look at. And then moving on.
I've got a question here from Emma saying, is there a record for the oldest recorded star?
So that's tricky, because when we look into space, we're always looking into the past. So like I was talking about Betelgeuse might have exploded 50,000 years ago. But because not 50,000 years ago, it could have exploded years and years and years ago, but we don't see that yet because the light's still traveling to get to us. So even when we look at Sirius, which is the very nearest thing to us, we're seeing Sirius is looking at we're seeing Sirius 8 years ago. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the light is older, is as old as the distance it's traveled, which is why the Hubble telescope and the James Webb telescope, and why they're such extraordinary instruments, because when they say they're looking back in time, what they're saying is that they can see things so far away that we're seeing them as they were, almost as they formed, whereas many of them will not even exist anymore. They will literally have run through their life cycles and be gone, but we can still see them clearly because we're seeing them as they were literally billions of years ago. So it's a really hard question. It's a hard question to answer, because nothing is the age that it is when you look at it. It's all kind of older.
Right. Can you help me then? So if you're talking about the telescopes that are looking that way far into the universe,
yes,
does that then cut down the time because we're skipping the light years that it's coming towards us? So let me rephrase that. With the use of these very powerful telescopes, are we able to see a more accurate or cut down on those light years away because we're seeing them? Is that
not at all?
Sense?
No, I mean, they're as old as they are. No matter what you looked at Sirius, but you could look at Sirius through the Hubble telescope and it would just fry the mirrors. But it would always be 8 years old. Because it is just, that's how long the light takes to travel.
Right. Okay.
So like the James Webb telescope and the Hubble telescope, but James Webb especially recently, and they have now images and signatures from galaxies as they were forming, literally within a billion years of the Big Bang, which sounds like a long time, but it's 13 billion years ago. I mean, they probably don't even exist anymore, but they're so far away that we can see them as they were 13 billion years ago. So we're never looking at things as they are when we look at space. We're always looking at things as they used to be. It just depends on how much used to be means, depending on how far back you look. We have better telescopes, so we can see things we just couldn't see before.
They've
always been there. We just couldn't see them. Now we can.
But by looking at them through a telescope, we would be able to cut down some of that light travel, would we, or not?
No, they still.
That's all. Just checking.
No. but the stars are moving in the sky, so there are quite a few constellations that in the kind of early in the Middle East, where astronomy developed hugely, they have images of constellations that are very familiar to us that are different because those stars have moved relative to each other.
Yeah.
And there would be stars that wouldn't have existed. We see things now that wouldn't have been able to be seen 1,000 years ago because they hadn't popped up yet, because they're too far away for us to have discovered that they've been born. So the sky's changing all the time as well. It's just
And because we have 1,000 years of looking up at the stars, is that a helpful measure, or because that the stars are so far away and we're talking on such a massive scale, is that still just kind of drops in the ocean in regards to how this tableau of the night sky has changed, or is it just like marginally because actually the size and the immense colossal nature of the universe, is it just
the universe is an incredibly dynamic, violent place. As I said, the Andromeda Galaxy is traveling towards us at like hundreds of miles a second, but it's going to take 4 billion years to get here. So it's if you were there, almost everywhere you look in the universe, there's incredible activity and violence. But because it's on such an enormous scale, we just don't notice it. What we do know is what we can see is that, telescopes have only been around for 300 years or so at all, but we do have constellation maps from all kinds of ancient civilizations, and we can see that the stars have moved relative to those. And of course, now these telescopes are so clever, they just tied into supercomputers that can work out how the stars are moving relative to each other, and and we can compute what they used to be like and what they'll be like in the future. But that's very recent.
Wow. That's fascinating. Thank you.
And then what was next?
Should we move on?
Yeah. Right. So this is one of my favorite things. So in 1995, not long after the Hubble telescope was launched, NASA decided to have a look into a really boring, uninteresting, dull, dark bit of space.
Just for podcast viewers, I think the other ones have been self-explanatory so far, but this one is like a normal star sky, but then with like almost like an L shape, like a Tetris piece.
Yeah, like a tiny little Tetris piece stuck in the middle.
In the middle, that's just like a corner piece. That's just kind of
very, very
highlighted.
Small. So for scale, that patch of sky, the whole of that patch of sky, you could draw an arc from one corner to the opposite corner. That would be a quarter of the moon.
Okay.
So it's about that whole image is about a quarter of the moon, and the bit in the middle is about the same amount of sky as would be blocked out if you had a tennis ball 100 yards away. Okay.
Okay.
So it's a tiny patch of sky, tiny, boring, dull, uninteresting patch of sky. And they took the Hubble telescope and they pointed at it sequentially at this little block of sky over a period of many days, even weeks, and just left it to soak up the light and see what emerged. So if you switch to the next slide, this is what emerged. Now, there are about 5 or 6 of all of those things that you can see that have that are kind of crossed like stars. You see the light is diffracted.
Yeah.
In 4 directions. Those are the only things in that image that are stars. Everything else is a galaxy.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely every other thing you see is a galaxy of stars, not a star.
Again, there's a lot of for the podcast listeners. There's like lots of color in this. I mean, it's the shape that we had kind of spun around, and it's just fascinating that it looks as if, like, if you'd asked a little kid to kind of draw your typical universe, they would have just gone ah. It looks as if it's just like being splodged everywhere, and yet it was just a boring patch. But yeah.
So this is the first of what Hubble called. They called it the deep field images, and there are quite a few deep field images, and they're doing some with James Webb now as well. But there are over 300 galaxies in that tiny, boring patch of sky in which there appeared to be nothing. That is covered by, as I say, the size of a tennis ball 100 yards away. That's if you held 100, if there was a tennis ball 100 yards up in the sky, you couldn't see behind it. This is what you couldn't see in the whole of the sky, and more than 300 galaxies in that one tiny little image, taken over a period of weeks, and it just blows my mind. Yeah.
And that's just in a boring patch on a
They deliberately chose the most uninteresting, dull bit of sky. There are other places where there are lots of galaxies. We know they're there. You can see them, but there was no evidence of anything until they did this, and just thought, wow, you know what? If it's like this everywhere, why would it not be? It blows your mind.
And do we know any of these distances away that these are? Or
I mean, yes, I think this image has been studied enormously. Some of them are different colors, and the colors often are. I'll get really geeky. The colors relate to the speed at which that galaxy is traveling towards us or away from us. You get what's like a Doppler effect. Ambulance goes past. Light does the same thing. It doesn't change speed, but it changes color. So the more red it is, they're called redshift. The more red it is, the faster it's traveling away from us. And the more white it is, the faster it's traveling towards us. So those galaxies aren't actually those colors. They're just like any other galaxy, but they're traveling in relation to Hubble, to us, in a way that shifts their colors depending on how fast they're moving. And it's one of the ways that you can measure speed, the speed and direction of things traveling in the universe, because you can actually measure the change in the color.
I just love the fact that there are people there that can look up at the night sky and not just kind of marveled, but then kind of thought, let's get geeky about what does the colours mean and what does this mean?
I think my personal opinion is the Hubble telescope was the single most extraordinary scientific endeavor of the last century. It's unlocked more information about the universe, about anything than anything else has. It's an extraordinary thing.
Wow, that's
fantastic. So moving on.
Moving on again. Oh,
my interests collide. So I never had any Lego. I never had any Lego as a child. I grew up poor single parent family. You had friends who had Lego. The 70s, so Lego was boring anyway. Well, it wasn't boring; it was exciting, but it was just blocks of primary colors.
Like the yellow houses with
So I have a growing collection of some of it's Lego, some of it isn't, but basically block built spacecraft of various kinds. And these are just some of them. There's a big Hubble telescope in the bottom left picture on the right hand side. It's really big. It's and I've got a James Webb to build. And there's another page of.
Sorry, I'm just still looking at this page really. So
you're still looking at it?
Yeah, no. So what's the top left satellite?
Okay.
Is it?
So yes, top left is oh no, escaped me. The little lander was Philae. It's 2014 when they landed. They put the lander onto a comet, onto an asteroid. This is embarrassing. What was the name of the craft? But the little blue one, the little blue blob on the bottom right, underneath the main body of it, there's a little landing craft that got landed on an asteroid, on a comet.
Oh wow!
To try and sample that, it was a groundbreaking. Completely gone blank about the name of the craft.
Yeah. But, no, it's fine. It's fine. No, let's move on.
and then top right is the most recent Lego Perseverance. That's the latest Mars rover.
Wow.
And then bottom left is the space station at the top.
Yeah.
And an Apollo lander, and then the Hubble. And then on the left it's half built. It's a model of one of the Voyagers. One of the Vikings. So one of the very first almost interstellar craft we sent out. The Vikings and the Voyagers are all still traveling. Voyager 1 just started sending back some sensible information. And they literally have passed beyond the solar system now. And it's I'm still need to finish the big dish and other bits, but and And then on the right, there's a
is that the Voyager, the one that's like they've reprogrammed so it can continue to talk back to us now?
yes, yeah,
Is
yeah.
that
We're
the
just
one?
on it now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's been, I mean, it's been in space for nearly 50 years. It's extraordinary.
Wow.
Yeah, and then on the right, there's the big the Lego space shuttle with Hubble in it, and then an astronaut. It's not a Lego set. The Hubble's not a Lego set either. It's Chinese bricks and a design by some crazy guy online who probably needs to go outside and get more sunshine than he does. But just amazing. There's amazing designs on the internet of Lego and
Shall I go to
brick
Shall I go
stuff.
to the next page?
Yeah.
Oh wow!
So top is that's a really big model. That's a beautiful model. Against a Chinese company called Mold King.
Yeah,
it's really good quality, but that's the full Apollo lander and command module. And it's about 30 inches across. It's a really big model, and you can just see the corner of my big Millennium Falcon as well.
I was about to say I did spy the Millennium Falcon.
Got a big Falcon as well. And then the rest are I've got the Apollo 11, Saturn V, and just some other little bits and pieces I picked up here and there that aren't Lego, different sizes of bricks and so on. But yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. I'm going to go to the next slide. That was fantastic.
And and Lego continues to ruin my life. They've just announced these sets. They're coming out. They're coming out middle of May. The Milky Way one is one of those. It's a print. Basically, it's a wall hanging. It's in their kind of Lego art series, and then the one on the right is the latest NASA, the Artemis Space Launch System for their lunar program, which they have underway. So if I found 400 pounds lying around somewhere by the middle of May, I'd snap them both up. But it's unlikely at this stage. But at some point, I'll beg for birthday money from my in-laws and so on, and see what I can cobble together. Yeah.
Wow, no, that's fantastic.
That's what Lego are about to do. So
yeah. So yes, that's Milky Way and the launch system. That's fantastic. And so, thank you for sharing all about that. That's really fascinating, and thank you. I think we've just been like gawping and in amazement, really. And I think in that gawping and amazement, how does this kind of impact your faith? How does it kind of help center you in this kind of with this interest?
More than anything, I just feel like this astronomy does this for me, and mountains do this for me. They just have a way of right sizing me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think space more than mountains. I mean, mountains as well. They've been there so long. They don't care about you. They're just but I think it's so enormous. There's so much, and there's so much mystery about how the universe works. It's still essentially a mystery, except that we are absolutely sure that everything is determined by relationship. So even the work they're doing in CERN with the Large Hadron Collider, everything they're discovering is essentially relational. Physics essentially is the exploring of relationship in the physical world. And I just, I don't think I take myself too seriously, but there are times when I take my life very seriously, and I take things more seriously than I should. And then I walk the dog around the block, and I look up, and I see Sirius, just our nearest neighbor, and I think 8 years ago, what was going on, And then I look up and I see, some of the other things, and I can see the stars, which means it's not raining on me, and it's, the dog and I are both enjoying it. But I guess more than anything, I realize how absurd my life is, how absurdly small it is. Not in a way that diminishes it, but in a way that leaves me feeling how much lighter, I suppose, about my tiny little moment in all of this mystery. And I don't stop worrying about things, and I don't stop wondering about things, and I don't think, Jesus made all this for us. Isn't it wonderful? We're human beings, and this is our nightly light show. I think that's a very arrogant position to hold. More than anything, I just feel like it relativizes my life, my brief, ridiculous life, into mystery of this universe, which we still don't. There's no why. Scientists can try and do the how and the what and the when, but there's no why to this amazing experience of being alive in the universe that science can offer us. And I think faith just gives us a really good set of questions as to meaning and purpose. But we can get so tied up, you people arguing about the minutiae of which bit of the Bible means what, and what color the next carpet should be, and should this hymn be in the next hymn book or not. And you just think, I don't not care about those things, but this keeps them in proportion for me, and helps me to also deal with the things that frustrate me and hold them lightly too. So more than anything, that's its contribution to my spirituality, which is a Christian spirituality in the huge not knowing of all that we don't know about the universe and ourselves, and that's okay. It's okay. But just to marvel at how amazing my life is in the midst of, and how absolutely ridiculously tiny it is in all of this time and space that's been happening for all of time and space. That's what it does for me. I like the geekiness, I like the maths, I like the science, I love all that stuff. Engineering is my background. I love all that stuff, but fundamentally that's not what's satisfying about it. That's what's interesting about it. What's satisfying about it is just little old me, sitting in my life with my telescope and my ministry and myself and the things I love and the things I struggle with, and thinking I can hold them as I'm able to. I guess that's what I'm really saying. In any given moment, because proportionally, it's ridiculous. My life is ridiculous,
I think that's right about that proportion, isn't it? And that it does literally put things into proportion of when you can see a star that is hundreds of light years away, and you just kind of think, actually, you know what? There are so many more bigger things literally at work in this universe, in this expanse, that we do try and, as you say, we are very small as a human race compared to everything else, and yet we have this kind of pomp that we're clever, we're advanced, and we're going to conquer all, and yet
it's Mark Twain's comment. I don't know if it was him, but human beings are the only species that can blush and that needs to, and I love that. I think the other thing I get out of this is not feeling clever because I know these things and I can tell to people, but actually genuinely seeing the wonder and the when you describe the sky to people and they get they get some of the sense of the ridiculousness of the proportions and the dynamic nature of it and how much is happening even though it seems so static. I love seeing that kind of awakening in people to to their own smallness, as well as to the amazing wonder and the not knowing that is the reason why we're still exploring.
I was going to say, when I was a teenager, I used to look up at the sky, and that for me was a point of reflection. And I lived out in the middle of nowhere, so we had no street lights, and so when it was a clear night, we could really see. And sometimes I would lay down on the concrete driveway and just look straight up. I had no neighbours, by the way, so I didn't have to worry about looking stupid. But for me, it wasn't even like a looking up to God. It was seeing what God is doing with the rest of the place, and just reminding myself, actually, God, you are so big, and the universe is so big that that it's humbling. It's really humbling, I think. Oh, and in fact, Stephen has just said, what's really humbling is that God created all of this, yet loves each one of us on this tiny little planet we call home. Absolutely.
And
Stephen.
I think there's a whole nother bit of geekery around. It's called the Goldilocks problem. It's like scientists call it the Goldilocks effect, where there are so many individual things that have to have happened and be exactly as they are for there to be life on Earth in the first place. I'm not. I'm fiercely not someone who believes that God pokes a finger in and organizes things, because I think it gets you into trouble with suffering very quickly. But there is an extraordinary synchronicity to the fact of, it's absurd that we're here anyway, that we can even have this conversation, because the statistical probability of us being here is so ridiculous. At the same time, there have to be other. I really think there has to be other sentient life in the universe, because it is just so enormous. How could we not make room for that? That would be really arrogant. But if you, the last sort of geeky bit is, if you had an orange, the atmosphere on Earth would be the thickness of one coat of paint on an orange. And so there's such fragility as well to where we are and who we are, and the climate stuff is real, but we think about it in different terms. But when you think about the atmosphere being one coat of paint on an orange or a tennis ball, it's one coat of paint. It's such a fragile place we have, to live on. And as I say, just the fact that we can have this conversation is miraculous, because we're here to have it.
Wow. Fantastic. Oh, thank you for sharing. And it is, it is humbling, isn't it, and just to be able to ponder and reflect on the world that we live in as being part of such an amazing and immense space. So thank you, Rory, for sharing. Thank you for sharing about your Lego as well. We are nearly finished, but I've got to remember that we've got to also share our Geeky Gallery, which is just our opportunity to share a little bit about what we've been up to. So it's my little regular plug that if you are interested in sharing on the show, being a guest as well, by all means get in touch. But there's also our Discord community where you can share things and have chat outside of the show and catch up. And if folks, you are listening, watching at another time, then do join the Discord server with us, and you can take part in and chat and contribute in your own special way. So here is our Geeky Gallery, and so there's not that many things to share this week, but it might surprise you that there are some minis to share. Oh, in fact, first of all, I've been playing Wormspan, which is the dragon game based broadly based kind of from the same people as Wingspan from Stonemaier Games. It's one of these games where you've got to kind of throw yourself back into and remind yourself how to play it. So that has been a part of the enjoyment of with good friends playing Wormspan, which is fun, and a lovely twist on Wingspan. Then there are minis, and Specky Geek, David, you were. Oh yeah, so David has actually just commented as well, and David has said thank you, Rory, for sharing. And here you are, David, with your minis and with your kill team, which unfortunately you got. You lost badly, but I'm sure it was taking part that counted, and got another little project underway with some minis being constructed. Then Mendip, you've got various things. I think this is like the progression of what we've shared previously, as well as a bit of a game of 40k over in the right hand side, and that is it, I think, for the Geeky Gallery. So thank you, folks, for sharing what you've been up to, and I think that is everything for tonight. Again, thank you, Rory, for joining us tonight. And is there any last comments or anything left to say?
No, just thanks for having me. And I can prattle on, so maybe I didn't leave enough room for other things, but
no, not at all. No,
thanks for having me on.
You've been absolutely fantastic, and it's been really interesting to reflect on. And you've been exactly on time as well. So thank you. I'm going to remove you now, but again, thank you, and I'll chat soon. And bless you, folks. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's been really interesting and fascinating to see some of that. Stephen has just commented as well. Trying to get these up in time. Roy, thank you for this fascinating presentation. If I may ask, do I detect a Southern African accent? there? If so, have you the opportunity to visit the observatory in Sutherland? I'm going to bring you back on, Rory, to answer that question, if that's all right, because I couldn't answer that.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, growing up, I mean, I grew up in South Africa. I would walk out into our back garden. We lived in a town, but I would look up and just see the Milky Way, absolutely clearly. You know, that's my childhood memory. No, never been to Sutherland. Driven past. It's also the coldest place in South Africa. Never been there, but South Africa is part of a project called the Kilometre Array. They're putting radio telescopes in 3 or 4 different places around the world, which together will have a dish size of a square kilometre.
Wow.
And they're combining all the data from these telescopes around the world, pointing them at the same place in the sky just to see what's out there. It's a fascinating project. That's I'm really proud part of it's in South Africa.
Yeah. Well, bless you. Yeah, sorry for dragging you back on, but I thought you could answer it
No,
better
it's
than
fine.
I. And I don't know.
Kick me off,
But I will
say.
say goodbye now, and no more questions to Rory.
Yeah,
but again, Rory, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Oh, then you got you back on again, and thank you, Stephen, for asking that really interesting question as well. And yeah, thank you, folks, for joining us tonight, and very kind of interesting and fascinating. So, if you are able to, it's safe to do so, if you have the opportunity to look out at the starlight sky, it's definitely given me something to think about, and I'm going to be taking an opportunity to stare at the sky when I am able to do so. But thank you, folks, for joining us. There's the Discord community there if you can find us. And yeah, thank you. The blurb is in the blurb. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to be your host tonight. And yeah, I hope you are able to geek safe, have fun, and geek long and prosper.